Plusieurs trucs mis de côté. On va avoir le go live. All right, I think we're live. Let's just make sure that everything is working correctly. For those that are in the chat, can you let me know how is the sound? I'll wait a bit for the response.
Okay, so it works perfectly. I think.
Nice. Okay. Is there a way to see the amount of viewers right now? It says there's
So currently there's
one.
two of us. There's myself and Guilty Ghost.
Yeah, but by the way, Guilty Ghost, thank you very much for the help on I'm State about the IK. I still haven't been able to look into it, but yeah, I will be using what you sent me to improve the switch to IK. Right. Thank you, CGDI. Yeah, let's just wait a bit. We'll see at what point we'll cap. But I'm guessing around last time we were 5, I think.
Yeah, 5 or 7, more or less.
So let's try to see if we reach the same numbers.
In the meantime, while we're waiting, recap.
Right. So let's see. On last stream, we went over a PowerPoint presentation where I explained kind of the philosophy behind the rig on the fly, how it came to be, how we're like kind of making it, like the main logic we're using to make decisions. And then we started looking at each features one by one, starting with the armature tools, but we talked about layer settings, controller shape settings, bake settings, and all the way up to the space switch. We stopped at make world, and we talked a bit about rig states as well. So on this stream, we'll be picking up on the space switch tab and go over each of those features right there. Is there anything I'm missing?
No, I think that's about wraps it up. For those who don't see anything about it, the goal of rig on the fly, being able to rig your character as you animate. So imagine you have an animation already.
I'm sorry, your sound is cutting off a bit.
Oh, my sound is cutting off?
Yeah.
Give me a sec just to see if I can fix that. Where can I check that? Would it be in the sound settings? Voice and audio. Automatically determine input sensitivity. Okay. So I may just grab this down. Okay, do you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So as I was saying, the goal of rig on the fly is essentially to rig your character as you animate it. So imagine you have an animation already made on a character, but you end up needing more, like an additional bone and an additional controller. Then you can add those in without breaking your previous animation. And the way it works is every time you make a change to the rig, you're going to bake the animation that you made. It's going to try to retarget the animation on your new rig, and then it's going to rebake those keys for this new rig. So you're essentially going to keep the same animation you had before or the same result, but with the new rig. And you do this anytime you want to change something in your rig. So that could be adding new stuff, or it could be removing stuff to make it more a simpler rig. And as you create your different rigs, let's say, you can create those rig states that allow you to save specific controllers that you want to reuse at other times. So that's what we saw last time. This time we're going to see a few other features that we have.
Yeah, also there's been a slight change. I'm exploring the idea of controllers with thickness. It's still in, yeah, it's still in the works. Ideally, you would be able to change the thickness right there and change the size by selection. So the thickness is an overall property because it's actually driving a geometry node that is applied to all those controllers. So those controller shapes you will find them under Ring on the Fly controller shapes, and this is hidden by default. But if you want to make changes to those controller shapes, you will find them here. And let's see if we exit pose mode, we select this, and we see that we have a Ring on the Fly wireframe thickness geometry node modifier. And it's the same for all of those. They're supposed to share the same geometry node so that it is all driven by this property. And hopefully this will make it easier to select controllers as well as seeing them, because regularly I kind of lose, especially like pull controllers when they were just wireframes. It was hard to find them between this spaghetti soup of controllers. You have things like this. It's hard to know what is what. And yeah, just the thickness adds some ease of like it's a bit easier to select.
So I think we can start now, because I don't think more people are gonna join, and if they do, then they can always rewatch the start of the video later.
Sounds good. So let's see. We ended up on space switching, putting controllers in world space, which is kind of not true, in the sense that if you make selecting a controller and clicking make world will change it so that it doesn't have a parent anymore. It keeps the motion as we mentioned before, but it's not it doesn't have a parent, and its rotation and location, if you reset them by Alt G and Alt R, you will find that the controller will end in the middle of your scene. But the reason why I'm saying that it's not actual world space is if you move around in object mode, your armature object, it will drag on the world controller, this one. So it's a kind of a fake world control. But if, let's see, if I go like this, move this over there, did it? Yes, kept. And let's see, I'm gonna put another controller in world space quickly. And this one I'm going to reset it as well, it resets it to the world. So when it creates this world orient arm shoulder controller, it aligns it with the scene space just at 0. So let me back up a bit. There we go. And if you want to get rid of this change, so let me see if so since the default, the rest pose for this controller is at the center of the scene, this means that the values there, for example, Z is the vertical axis, so it will move the controller in the vertical axis. So doing this, let me remove this guy. Suddenly we have our controller back up there. To this. So selecting the Z value and just moving it, it will move it aligned with the world scene, the world axis. And then if you want to bring this controller back to its usual function, you would just click the remove world button and it will bake down the changes just very quickly. Let's bring this arm up a bit there and let's bake this down, and suddenly you don't lose any motion and you have your controller up there. And if you reset the position of this controller, you will see that it snaps back to where it's supposed to be. Right. Next up is the aim. So I'm going to bring up the axis there and start with the head. So for this feature, we have different settings. It starts off with the aim axis and you have the distance. This means that it will bring up a aim controller that will position itself along the selected axis. So right there, plus X would mean that it will be here on the left and about the distance of 1 meter. So pressing the aim there will add this aim controller. We still have the motion baked down, so we didn't lose that. The controller shape changed to inform you that it has a ring on the fly aim constraint on it. Ideally, that's something to work on, but I would want the custom object there to have a rotation on this -9. Ideally, I would want it to end up like this, somewhat, so that the line points towards where it aims. But that's still to be worked out. But doing this means that you have a aim target that has been added that is 1 meter away from your selected controller. And this selected controller will now aim to this aim target. So this is great for a variety of reasons. You can offset. I usually use it to offset the aim. There we don't have a great use for it in this example, and yeah, I'll try with another one. This one maybe. yeah, let's try with one of the arms. We'll go on positive y, which is down the axis there. Is it? Yes, because let's see if I put the position there. So the y-axis points down. I'll do both arms at the same time, make aim, and you have those both controlling the arms. And what you can do is those are in world space similarly to the make world. This means that the transform axes are aligned with the scene. So suddenly in your graph editor, you could, for example, reduce the amount of back and forth by just selecting the curve and scaling it down. Suddenly, you're limiting the range of rotation of this arm. Let's show it like this, a bit cleaner. So, and if I increase it, scale it up, you would be able to increase this. So that's an interesting way to control your rotation. And let's see, if you want to break it down, you would click on remove aim after selecting the aim targets. I think, yeah, I made it so that we can also click on any controller that has to do with this specific setup. So be it the one that is aiming down or the one that is the target, and it will break it down. So for example, we select the aim there and the target there and the one that is aiming for this other arm. If we remove aim, it breaks both down. But yeah, since we didn't select the yellow one, it's not breaking it down. Let's see. Another good way to use it is along a chain. You would be making something like this. Let's try it a bit smaller. Making aim. Let's bring those shapes a bit down. And well, if I'm going to add some offset there, offsetting the keys on those aim targets, you could increase the like the kind of the curve of it. You can add like a delay in your rotations this way. Somewhere where it could be useful is actually, let's remove this, remove aim here. And what we will do is use the other aim, which is the aim offset. This one is very good for this specific example. We use a 3D cursor as a starting point for placing the aim target. And now all the selected controllers will aim towards this 3D cursor without changing how they are positioned. So very quickly, there. Now we have always at the point of what we had selected, which is actually just the offset. It will place the target, and now this controls the hand. You can still rotate the controller, and what we can do here, if we maybe to sample it like this, offset things around. And so with this, I'm adding a delay up on the tip of the bone, the stick. Or maybe you want to do it the opposite and actually make it anticipate the motion. So be something like this. This is and it's delayed. So this is not delayed. And if we bring these keys up there, no, that are not the right ones. Bring these keys up there. I will just increase the cycle of this animation, and yeah, it kind of goes in, it anticipates the rotation. Also, with this, it's easier to plant it somewhere and to also clean up the curves. So here we can see that the curves are a bit squiggly down there. I would select them all and Alt O, which is basically smooth keys. Smooth keys can be found under keys. You have an operator somewhere. Yeah, up there. Smooth keys, and you can apply it with the short keys, the shortcut, and that's easier to apply, and you will smooth out your curve. And this is great for like fixing the trajectory of the tip of a point where you don't actually have a controller up there. That's a good way to use it. And similar to the rest, you would just click on any of those two and remove aim to break it down. Let's bring things up. And yeah, I guess we still have some fixes to do, like polishing to do, because the hand didn't found its usual controller shape. But going back up there and first the basic setup will add controller shapes to any bone that is missing some. All right, next up we have the parent. So the parent will, the way it works, it will basically kind of what you would expect. It would parent change the hierarchy a bit and have, for example, let's take this hand and parent it to this shoulder up there. So doing this, you have your hand that is now a child. It is mentioned in the prefix and has this octagon shape. And you still have the same motion, but now it's a child of the shoulder. And this is pretty good to change the space where a controller is in. And I've used it to, similarly to the aim, kind of tone down some motion. So it brings this down, for example, and it will, like the motion will be toned down in relation to its parent. And that could be very useful in some cases. Another way to use it is, let's see, this was a parent. Well, I'll go through the others. So this was the simple parent. You have two options to restore it: the restore child and restore siblings. Usually it will explain in the text that appears when your mouse is on top of the button, but it changes the selected parent space controllers back to their original space, so it kind of resets it. What happens is, if, for example, I'm putting this leg as a child of this upper arm, add parent again. Let's break this down a bit. If I press restore child, it will only restore the child that is selected, or the children that are selected. So now it moved the leg back into its original space. But if I restore siblings, it will restore not only this child, but all its siblings, all its direct siblings. So it will find which one is the parent. From the parent, it will find the other siblings, and it will basically restore child, but on all those controllers that it found. So only selecting one of those children, restore siblings, it restores both the hand and the leg. Let's remove those axes for now. Then we have the parent offset. So this is similar to the aim offset, where it will parent to a point in that is the 3 cursor. It's not the best option there, but I've been using it from time to time for kind of rolling the feet, specifically down there. Actually, it's ideal for adding pivots, like temporary pivots. You would set your 3 cursor somewhere here, for example, and parent offset. And now my selected IK foot rotates around and is a child of this new controller that has been created on the spot of the 3 cursor. But it didn't lose any motion. And that's what it's meant by offset. And what you can do is kind of lock it in place. So for example, this one, I'm going to delete those keys, duplicate this so that it locks this controller down to this point for a few frames. And you can see that it locked it there. And yeah, for trolling, it's pretty good. And the advantage of this, rather than just going through the 3 cursor, change it to 3 cursor, and then moving this, which is for a single frame, it does the same, but now it does this in space, through time. So now without those, without any keys in between, and since this one and this one are the same poses, we'll still keep this. Or if you want a rotation up there, through time, you will still have this behavior. So it will continue to rotate around this point. Hopefully that was clear, but I would be happy to re-explain it a bit differently if it helps. And similar to the others, if you restore child there, it will actually remove the parent copy So if I select the child, restore, it removed the parent offset. And let's go back to individual origin. Yeah. There we go. Let's see. Then we have the parent copy. This one, I've shown how to use it a bit before. Last time on the, what was it? The center of mass. But the reason you would use this parent copy is a bit different from the rest. It's usually when you want to parent it to another bone, which is usually a child of the bone that you selected. So for example, if I want this upper arm to be a child of this hand, it would create a dependency loop where, well, the hand is still a child of the upper arm, and if you want it can't be. This means that it can't be a child of the hand. So what parent copy does is creates a copy of the new parent controller, and it will be used as the new parent. So let's see it in action. You still have your hand up there, and it's still a child of your upper arm, but the motion has been plotted exactly where you would have your hand. So the difference between this and the parent offset is that this new controller follows exactly what was the motion for the selected parent in parentheses. So now this would be like you would be able to turn around the whole arm around this hand position. And you can still attack as a parent. You would still be able to make changes to it afterwards. Let's store it. And I guess we have the reverse hierarchy, which is next. So it's a bit similar to the parent, but what it does is reverses the hierarchy, the way the hierarchy functions. So it will go up the hierarchy. Let's see. Let's go with this arm. And what it will do is suddenly your so usually this is how it's driven. So you have the hips that drive the spine, that drive the chest, and so on. But if you reverse, now your spine doesn't is the child of this chain. So what it did is from the one that was selected, the selected controller, it will create a new chain and inverse the relationships so that the one at the base of this hierarchy is the child of the one at the tip, the one that was selected. So right there, you would still have your animation that plays as usual, but now everything is, well, everything in this chain is a child of this reverse orient. And this is pretty great for, wait, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I had a question for this. Is there a way to combine this with IK, or is it not possible? Because it seems like it'd be fighting each other.
Yeah, so that's the thing. It's actually pretty great for to use with IK. So we put a special behavior on it, and what it does is as the script looks up the chain, if it finds that there is a bone in the chain that is affected by an IK or a world space regonify constraint, then it will use this as its new base of the hierarchy. So as an example here, if I reverse the toe, it will not go up all the way to the hips. It will stop at the IK controller. And this means that now I can rotate. Here I've inverted the hierarchy, and this is now the IK, like the parent of the IK. And as always, you didn't lose the motion. But that's like a specific behavior just for this function. And it has to kind of be made by hand to figure out which are the ones that we want to like figure out. Oh, this is where I should stop my looking at the hierarchy and switch where is the rest of this new chain.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Can you give like an example of a use case where that'd be very useful?
Well, right there for the feet.
For the feet.
If you want to have a foot roll, suddenly it's a bit easier to rotate from there. Whereas the usual pivot is like this, and if you want to rotate around the toe, it's kind of a bit difficult to do this. And the other solution would be to place your 3D cursor there and parent offset. But this way, you easily get this behavior, which is somewhat similar to what you have in a foot roll setup.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So essentially, yeah, depending on your use case or which workflow you prefer, you can choose whether you want to work more with this kind of constraints or for space switching, or even combine all of them to create a specific thing where it can speed up your workflow, essentially.
Yeah. And right there, I had an error pop up. I guess that's something that I need to look into to fix it. But you can select any one of those in the chain and restore. But apparently, if you select two different chains, it will return an error. But if you encounter this error, just selecting part of the chain, part of this other chain, should you should be able to restore the state of this hierarchy. All right, and just as a reminder, here under almost all of those changes in the rig, each controller that is added have the possibility to add a custom controller shape. So, for example, if you want the aim targets to be a different shape, let's go quickly on see what calf mesh. Let's take a comb and move it up. All right, and aim target will become this. Not sure how it's gonna go with the. Yeah, we'll see. And now I want to put this again, aim down, offset as like this, and our controller shape is now this code. So this is the same for all of those submenus that mention color shape settings. This is how you would kind of personalize your settings. Let's remove this and restore this aim right there. Yes. All right, where were we? So we finished with the space switching. Now we have the simple constraints. So the simple constraints don't have this behavior of changing, like it changes the behavior of the rig, but just it doesn't have this baking process that needs to happen, because it's as it says, simple, in a sense that here you can add a copy transform that would be usually used for. Here you have copy counter transforms, you have aim. Let's see. We used it last time as an example to get a kind of a spine, like a Nike spine. So let's bring this up again. Take those 3 arm controllers, make them world space, and now we'll have them aim down at each other. So we want them to aim with the plus Y axis. That is because this is plus Y axis is down to the child. And if we go, so the way this works as simple constraints, it works with the selection order. So there's a specific script just to enable this functionality. And because by default, Blender doesn't record selection order, at least for the bones. So what it will do is, now that I've selected those 3 controllers, if I press aim now, this one, the first one selected, will aim down to the second one, and the second one will aim down to the third one. So now that I did this, if you go under constraints, you will see that your controller now has a simple ring on the fly constraint. So you still have your usual behavior, but your usual motion, but now this is the behavior that they have. And one of the reasons to have it this way is that this is stored in the rig state. So when you're going to save and load rig states, this is the way to save it somewhere, because it's pretty to do it by hand, but if it's saved on a rig state, you can load it up all in one go. So let's see. But the thing with the simple constraints is that it might change the motion. So let's have it this. Let's have this spine control aim towards this hand. We're going to use one of the other axes. Let's see. Negative Z. So this means that the front of this controller will aim here. There we go, aim. And now he's very preoccupied by his hand. And when you have those simple constraints, you have 2 options to remove them or to bake them. Remove them removes only the constraint, so it doesn't bake anything. And bake will remove the constraint, but also bake the motion. So the constraint is gone, and you have your motion that has been baked down. Let's go back a bit.
So just to reiterate, when you add the simple constraint, it's going to change your animation. But then if you remove them, you can either choose to return to the previous animation you had or to bake the animation as it was before. Is that right?
Kind of. It's not that you change the animation by having this point out there. It's that you have now this constraint that is there. Your animation is still the same. If you tone down the influence, you still get your initial animation. It's just that you have this constraint there that modifies the result, but the animation underneath is still the same as what.
Okay, so yeah, the keys did not change. It's just that it looks different because the constraint is there, and Rig on the Fly wasn't able to bake before adding this constraint, keeping the previous animation like it does for the other tools that you have.
Mhm. Also, there's a reason why you would use remove instead of just pressing the cross there to the constraint, is that doing it through remove actually removes it from the rig state list. So this way it kind of cleans it up correctly, rather than doing this, which functionally does the same when you're animating, but if you're working with rig states a lot, you might be you might do better to just remove it like this. Also, you can choose the influence of this created constraint. So, for example, let's see, I think I have somewhere there. So a good way to use those simple constraints is, let's see, maybe I can going to bake all of this.
Yeah. Before you go into this, there's Sebastian that is asking a question. He says, "The bake operator is independent of the NLA editor?" Question mark.
Let's see. So the way the baking works in Rig on the Fly is that it looks, it tries to find every action related to the selected armature. I will actually have a little flow chart there. And what it does is when Dragonfly wants to bake something, it is provided the armature object. It knows which smart frame option you have, and it knows also the bonus that you want to bake down. And from the armature object, it gets the animation data. From the animation data, it gets the active action and the actions in the NLA. And from this, it lists all the actions that were in the object's NLA, and it bakes the animation down on those specific ones. So if you have a bunch of actions down there in your NLA, it will bake the motion on all of those that you have down there. All of those that are in this in the rig's armature NLA. So it will not look for other actions from other armatures, but if you have one that is missing that you want it to be baked down, it will not bake it down if it's neither in the NLA or in the active action. Hopefully that was understandable. But while we wait for a confirmation or the opposite, let's go in here. We have there it's called. Let's try to make it more visible. This IK there, and I'll just keep those visible. And maybe what I'm going to do is put on the wireframe. All right. So right there we have a setup with an FK arm. So nothing special. And what you would want, for example, I have put some what I call bend bones in this hierarchy, but are basically a way to add some twist correction, for example. And so the way I've set it up is so that I can easily add simple constraints. So right now, when I rotate this upper arm and it's around its y-axis, this one I would want it to kind of stay back a bit. So let me find things here. I think I've set things up a bit badly. So what I would want is this bone to stay a bit back. What do I have there? Well, this one is going to be a bit easier. Let's go with the hand. If we rotate the hand around its y-axis, we would want this bend bone to rotate as well. And so how you would do this is click on this this one that you want to rotate halfway. I think it already has a track. So let's remove it for now. And let's see, we want it to copy the rotation of this hand, but only half. So I change the influence to 0.5. Select the one that will take half of the rotation of the hand. Take the hand and copy transforms. Copy transforms will its settings depends on what has been selected on top. So either it does rotation, location, or scale, or it can do a full copy transforms, as it say, if all of those are selected. But right now we want just the rotation, so let's copy this. And you saw that there has been a slight shift in this this first rotation. And if I zoom a bit closer, and now if I rotate this arm, this other controller moves halfway, or at least does half the rotation. The thing is, now it kind of does the same for all rotations and not limited to an axis. And so the way I would do it with this setup is to add an aim. And this time I want it to be at full influence. And this way, it continues to aim at the hand, but it takes half the rotation first. And so, yeah, you can see in the constraints, you have first a copy rotation, half influence, and a simple aim at full influence towards the hand. And the reason why it's not more complex right now is because there's a bunch of options in here, and it will kind of become over complicated if we have all those settings to specifically tell it that it needs to be in world space, in local space, or anything. But if it's something that is like a setting that you want to use, especially for your workflow, then we will make an effort to add this functionality for which target space you want, which owner space you want.
So just to clarify here, the reason you're doing all of this is to have more control over the twists of your limbs, and so that's why you're creating those additional constraints. I was thinking, since you're going to use rig states and these things work with rig states, is that something you can do just once and then reuse if you need them again, so you don't have to redo all of those steps?
So with rig state, that's the idea. Generally, it's a bit complicated to bring an animation that wasn't done in Blender, to bring it up in Blender and have it set up correctly easily. And having it in the rig state kind of saves a rig in script form, and you can load it back up from
And
like from the animation of an FBX. So it
yeah,
kind of works on any constraints
so it
of
works
the
on
rig on the
anything.
fly.
And
Yeah.
does that mean that, for example, you could create a rig state once and reuse it on another armature, or is that not possible?
So right now there's an issue with the simple constraints that requires you to have the same object, but I plan to have it work differently, where it ignores the object if when it was made it was the same, because ideally, for example, now here we have two rigs, and currently the simple constraint can work between rigs. So let's see if I take this upper arm, I can have it aim down at this staff. And if you want to reload that state, and you have both this, like it records that its target is from the staff rig, and that from the staff rig it was actually the staff metal controller. But the thing is, because this is a requirement, if it's missing, or if it's if the armature object is not the same, currently there's an error. But that's something that I would hopefully modify so that it becomes so that it's possible to apply those simple constraints to any rig as it is, because this is the case for the rest of the rig on the fly changes. When you make changes to your rig but through the IK switch or space switching, it's currently armature object agnostic, and yeah, that's something that I want to simplify a bit. But yeah, the rig constraints currently don't work as they should on that aspect, but hopefully it will get improved.
Yeah, nice. That's good to know. Yeah.
All right, and yeah, just to show, if I select all three transforms and select something else, it will snap completely, and instead of using one of each constraint, it will actually use a complete transform constraint. Let's just remove it. And let's go back to the cube person. Right. Quickly there, and bring those down. Okay, so now we're on the keyframe tools. The keyframe tools are, since you're breaking down a lot of your motion, there is some very useful things that you could do by modifying those the keys and how they work. So let's see. We have a key range, which as an example right there, for example, this bone, it doesn't affect anything. Let's say that it doesn't have any keyframes between frame 2 and 38. You can specify the step, where does it start. So let's say that it starts at 10. Where does it end? At 30. And then let's put a step up to. So every 2 frames, starting from 10, it will place a key. And the type of key depends on the selection up there. So if you press available only, it will key only the properties that appear in here. Not the ones that appear here, but the ones that have a that are keyed. So we will find them by seeing up there in the item. It will be yellow. This means that there are keys. So it will key somewhere here. If I remove, for example, there the scale. Let's remove it completely. If I leave available only, it will key, even though scale was turned on here, since there was no scale, it didn't key any scale values. And you can see that it put a keyframe 10, 12, 14, etc. And if we want to not key location, do it again. You can see that X, Y, and Z location don't have new keys. So there's something a bit similar in Blender already, which is sample keyframes. I thought that was it. I guess because there's no change to it. Let me try quickly. Let's put a change in there. Maybe there's supposed to be 2 sample. Yes. So this is a bit similar where it will, and that's in Blender by default. It will place a key between every frames from the ones you selected. So I selected the frame number 2, frame number 19, and place the key on every frame in between. But the reason why you would maybe want to use the keyframe tools is because you can specify which transform type you want. I'm not sure if it's the case here. Sample keys. I don't see extra options. So yeah, you could do either way if it works for you to have this one, which already comes with a shortcut. Then yeah, it would pretty much do the same. Here you have the option to change the step value. And there's another thing that is useful here is that you can key as actives. So for example, let's take, let's continue with this one. We don't have any keys there. And let's take anything. It doesn't really have to be animated, it's just down there for the keys. I'm going to remove a bunch of keys there. Okay, so on this toe, I have keyframes here. On this top controller, I have keyframes, the head top. I don't have any keyframes between number 2 and number 38. And if I put this toe bone as the active one by selecting it last and press the key as active, it will place keys on the same frames as the active one. So let's try it out. Key as active. Yep. So now you have those keys on 10, 24, 25, and 38. So sometimes it's useful when you're making changes to, like using layers, DNLA, you want some keys to be, you want like to set keys for all those controllers on the same frames, but you don't want to do it by going in there, selecting them, snap to the next one, press I, copy rotation, next one, etc. This way you can use it after selecting all of those. Key as active, it does it a bit faster. Let's see. Then we have the use selection, which once checked on, use the selected keys of the active controller. So that's a bit deeper in it. So let's see if we have, for example, on the toe, let's take some keys, move them around. It's been a while since I've used this. So for example, we want this head to now have keys here and there. Let's remove the ones that were added. So here and there. If I use selection and key as active, now it only puts a new keyframe on the ones that were selected. All right. Next up, we have the offset keys. So offset keys have a setting, which is the offset value. And this is one of those features that function with the selection order. So down the selection order, it will offset the keys. Now, right now, I'm selecting the upper arm, lower arm, and hand. And let's put an offset of 3, which is 3 frames. Now that I offset keys, it moved the keys of the upper arm 3 frames down, the lower arm 3 more frames down, and hand again. And so what you could do is, I believe you can go negative with those as well. And it doesn't have to be exactly 1 frame. So 1.5 in there. Offset keys. The section order got corrupted because I've been usually this comes up when I do selections, deselect things, and undo. And so I come back to this selection, but the property of the selection order got messed up by doing this. So just reselecting things again, offset keys, and now all the keys got offset on negative 1.5 frame. All right. And next up, we have dynamics on transforms. At this point, we're not that much into changing the rig on the fly, but it's extra features that go very well with it. I'm a bit tempted to separate it from rig on the fly, but at the same time, I use it so much with it that at least to me it makes sense to keep it there. But depending on your feedback, maybe we would separate it. But very quickly, let's see. This would go pretty well with. Let's put some things in world space. All right. So we put the spine there. In world space, let's put those arms so that they don't inherit the rotation. Okay. And let's do the same for the head. There. Okay. Now I'm going to do, let's see. Yes. So from here, now that we have this controller in world space, if I go specific to location, let's normalize this so that it's all putting together instead of being so far away from each other. And we see that those are the curves that it goes through to get this motion. And what you can do is add some dynamics to it. So you get a preview in this bottom window, and those things shouldn't be there. There's no reason to touch them. This curve gets updated as you play around with those settings. And what you can do with it is define at which frame you start the dynamics. So let's see, let's start it at 10 and end it at frame 30. Doesn't leave much time, but hopefully I'll be able to show a bit better. Then we have the blend, start blend. So this tries to blend the motion from the dynamics down to where the frame ends. So it will be a bit easier to see when I'll be making those changes. But basically from frame 20, it will start kind of blend out from the dynamics and back to its original pose. Then we have the frequency, which defines the reaction to the change in motion. The higher it is, the more it kind of checks and updates the dynamics. The lower it is, the longer it will take to move and to apply actually those other set are going to have. That's good. 3. Then we have the damping. So damping is, if it's super high, it will kind of absorb the energy. And if it's super low, you will get a lot of bounce. And yeah, like the bounce or jiggle. And finally, we have response, which is how it behaves when there's when there's a change in direction in the values. And so what happens is, maybe it's going to be easier, instead of applying it all there, I'm going to make a new, let's add a bow. And this will serve as a good example because it will actually fit what you see up there. Let's see, go back there. So let's say that in one frame, it changes from this pose to this one. So that's a big jump. And right now it does, if we leave only this one visible, this is what you would see. It goes suddenly up. With this, you decide on which transform it does this operation. And then it kind of applies the settings that you had to this transform type. So right now it's location that I'm going to do. And you should get this kind of curve. So starting from 10, it will stop at 30. And similar to what we had in the preview, it starts off very strong, then suddenly curves out. So instead of snapping, it damps out. If we go back and lower the damp, let's put something like 0.2. You get a lot more of this bounce. And this is what you end up getting. If I start to blend a bit later, so 25, yep, the transition back to its original pose starts a bit earlier, frame, no, a bit later at frame 25. And lastly, so going back to response, this will, if you put it positive, it will kind of suddenly jump to the where it's trying to go. But if you put it negative, you get an anticipation. So let's see. There. From this point, you get an anticipation before it goes there. And then again, you have this settling. So currently I haven't used response much. I've left it to 0. But there might be cases where it could be interesting. And the way this works is it actually looks at the curves. So I wouldn't recommend using it for rotation that are in quaternion. But for Euler, it would be fine to add to use dynamics on rotation. For scale, since it's also pretty similar to location, how easy it's to understand. It's, let's see, go from this pose to suddenly like super big, and let's add even more bounce and make it last a bit longer, up to 5% scale. There we go. So the thing is, all of this works on motion that is already existing. So what you can do is from something like this spine right there is apply some, let's see, lower damp, and maybe high frequency will add, no, let's put 5. We'll see how this goes. And let's start off on frame 2 and see how it goes. So go through almost all the animations, all the animation, and we'll apply this. So as you can see, this was the look of the curves before. This is the look of the curves now after doing it. And there is a bit of dynamics on this now. So it used to be a bit rigid. Maybe we want to increase the frequency. Something like 7. Try it again. Yes, it's not the frequency that needs to be moved, it's low frequency. Guess that's not the best example. Let's see for something that has more motion. Let's go down to the aim offset there. Okay, and let's go back up there. Let's see, pretty high, damp, pretty low. I guess it's not the best examples on this specific animation. Yep. Unfortunately, I don't think I have an animation that play well. Oh, actually, maybe not. Yep. There we have I've used the dynamics for his pom pom. Actually, and this is how I came up. How this animation came up is that I've used the dynamics directly on the aim of this of his pom pom. So let's go in there. Starting with. We actually don't need to add those basic setup, and let's go. We're gonna add an aim in the y-axis. Let's keep it very close. So 10. Okay. 10 may be too close. There. So now for all the actions in there, so we have multiple clips. The pom-pom works in aim space. And if we go to a specific animation, so let's go for the death one. Let's see where it is. And let's keep things here. This way it only plays this animation. And what we can do is change how this aim behaves using dynamics. So let's add a bunch of damp just to reduce the amounts of bouncing that you'll get. Let's see how this goes. So suddenly there's a lot of lag in this aim location transforms. And this is because I've put the damp very high. If we go back to how it was, lower the damp a lot, try this out. Suddenly goes super wide in the bounciness of it. And if we wanted to react a bit quicker, we would multiply this. And it kind of goes crazy. By the way, this should be 1.24, and let's put this a bit further down there. Yeah, 300 seems good. And see how it behaves afterwards. So, right, the blending starts a bit early. I guess this is a bit confusing because right now this animation starts, like the clip starts at frame 152, but here those changes actually are on the action itself, not where it is right here. So when I press tab to go into edit mode of this strip, it places the keys right there, starting from frame 153. But if I don't go it like this, but if I look for the action there, it will put it at the action's original location, like the original time. And so the values that I had in up there is actually in the actions local time. So this should be 1. All right. Let's try again. So a lot of bounds everywhere, and it ends up settling down. And if we want this bounce to end sooner, keeping the same settings down there, but we want the blending to start at frame 50, for example. Press the lock, and with the same settings, it settles down earlier. Yep. So I guess with this, we kind of went through everything around the dynamics. I've mainly focused on
the dynamics are. I think the dynamics are really cool because it really adds a lot of movement and speeds up when you're trying to animate anything that has to do not let's say physics per se, but something that simulates a physical movement. And being able to preview all of this inside your little graph is super useful because you can just see or expect what you're going to get as a result. Of course, there's still some trial and error until you're really happy, but at least having a visual representation of what it could be is very useful. For anyone that's interested inside this, the whole calculation, how it works, the frequency damping and response, you can learn more by researching something called PID, which is something that is used a lot in engineering for settling to a value that you're trying to reach. And I think with all that, I've already gone for an hour and a half. Maybe Eduardo, you want to do a little conclusion, and then we will stop, I think.
Let's see, because we had the rig stage that we already mentioned a bit ago, but I guess I think there's not much else to talk about all this. There's a bunch of work that needs to be done still on Rig on the Fly, so that's why it's still in alpha. Between the things that I mentioned with SIP1 constraints, but also like controller shape settings, there's still some weird behavior there. IK that needs to be fixed. And also things like this is an aim, for example, so you shouldn't be able to make it aim again. So this button should be disabled, and that's the kind of cleanup that is still to be done. I guess there's I'm currently working on flowcharts for how things work internally on Rig on the Fly, and I'll be posting those on Discord, I think. But those are the steps that a usual Rig on the Fly constraints go through when you create a new Rig on the Fly constraint, when you remove it, and kind of going over as well the baking process and how the rig states are saved, and well, how they are stored and what kind of information gets stored in there. And hopefully this will help people understand how the tool works, at least the idea of it, and maybe it would be easier to offer suggestions using those as a base for discussion. So yeah, once I'm done with those, I'll be sharing them in Discord. And I guess one small thing to finish off. So recently, I've made a an animation with this character. I'm not sure where I put. Let's look for the final version of it. Katana dog. So we had this dog doing those poses, and still using rig on the fly for the whole thing. Let's bring up the little guy there. Gets angry, barks a bit, grabs a sword, and is ready to fight. And for this example, the legs are in IK for the whole animation there, and the sword changes pace during the animation. Right now it's in tail space, I guess, and I was changing it to headspace when he was grabbing it like this. And yeah, like Realify made it a bit easier to do something like this. The scabbard as well is its own. Not sure if I have. No. Yeah, the scabbard has is a part of the whole thing, of the sword as well. But yeah, changing this this parent to the head made it easier to just pose the character. So I would be going through this sword controller, removing the child, yeah, restoring child. Unfortunately, it doesn't keep the keys in constant, so that's something also to fix or to add on the baking process. And now this sword is in its own space. Let's select back where's the tail? There. And I would bring this sword now to headspace. Making sure that this is back into constant on the sword. And so you still have the same animation. And you still have the sword on the head. And this is possible with the smart frames on, so that it only bakes the frames that are already there and doesn't bake anything in between.
Yeah, this animation is awesome. It really shows how Rig on the Fly really shines for those types of use cases where you're switching a weapon from one space to another, and you don't want to change the rig. You don't want to change the original rig, the one that would be used, for example, in the game engine or anything, and you just want to be able to animate faster and easier.
Oh, and also like the IK is not a 2-bone IK, but a let's see, this one has 4 bones. So you would have access to those extra bones to polish up a bit the pose right there. So I've been using it especially for this pose, for example, kind of tweaking a bit the hands. So yeah, those are the kind of things that is not that easy to find in usual rig or when you're doing your own rigs and just want to focus on animating. So I guess Brilliantly has some features that is a bit more appropriate for animators to just focus on animating. But that does require to understand some of the technical part of rigging and yeah, once this is done, you should be able to focus just on animating.
Yeah, and I think with that we can wrap it up. So thank you everyone for joining. We'll make the video live once it's done, and we'll make sure to share it in Discord. We'll also share the graph that Eduardo made, where there's the different life cycle of the things for rig on the fly, and I think that's it.
So I guess what we can do is ask if there's any questions before we finish. But otherwise, yeah, we'll just be stopping there if there's no questions. I guess we'll put 1 extra minute. And I guess right now, just as an example, here was how I was using Ray on the Fly just to make game animations. Wall land, wall clinging, wall jumping, and yeah, all the animations that are currently on screen have been made using Ray on the Fly. Like the characters themselves were pretty limited because we planned on using the Unity's humanoid rig, so there wasn't really any reason to animate anything like the hat and all of this. But still, it was very good to do those animations. All right.
Yeah. So there's a Guilty Ghost asking if we ever do streaming for just showing our process of animating. Is that something you'd consider doing, Eduardo, or would that slow down your animation process?
No, I've been doing it for work already, just sharing, like stream myself just for work. But I could do the same for, yeah, for work, for animations that are made for personal stuff or for Potion Blast as well. So right now I don't have any plans on doing personal animations, but if it comes up, I'll be happy to stream it.
Awesome. So for those who don't know, the character here that is on screen is from a game that we're making called Potion Blast. That is on Steam. It will come out normally end of June or early July. It's a game with magicians that can drink potion and mix them to create spells and blast other people. It's a multiplayer only, well, local multiplayer. So you can't play alone, but if you have you can play through the Steam remote play to play with some friends, and it's a fun game. And I think that's about it. Thank you all for joining. And if we ever do, or when we'll do a stream again, we'll let you know in the Discord channel. And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining.
Have a good day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.